Please welcome President and CEO, Marriott International, Arne Sorenson, and founder and CEO, Skift, Rafat Ali.
Arne, sit on the other side. I'll sit this way. Arne, welcome to the Skift Global Forum. Thank you for coming. I know you are very, very, very busy, that small little merger that you just finished.
Yeah, it's been a rock and roll 3 or 4 days.
I could see a little bit of step in, extra lift in your step.
It has been great fun. Yeah, really.
So, China, what happened?
I think much less than you might think. Obviously, people have been very interested in the China angle of our Starwood acquisition since Anbang surfaced in March.
What was the first call you got about it?
I got a call from Tom Mangus, the CEO of Starwood, who said, they're back.
Oh my God.
They're back. And I said, who? And he said, our Chinese bidder. And of course, that launched 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, exactly. It launched 3 or 4 weeks of a bidding war, which I guess on balance, I would have predicted we'd lose. I remember going to bed the first night and saying to my wife, oh my God, we're in a bidding war against the Chinese. What's the chance we're going to win? But we decided, let's put our best bid on the table, and we've put all this work into it, and there's no sense just losing and walking away without trying. So we put the bid on the table and somewhat surprisingly succeeded at the end of the day. And then this approval process afterwards, I think, had nothing to do with that. I think it was the Chinese government taking the time that they were allotted to do their work. I don't think they were penalizing us for winning in a competition with Chinese. I don't think it was about American political issues. I don't think it was about Donald Trump. None of those things.
Yeah. How many hotels do you have in China now?
We're 250 open and maybe another 300 to 350 in the pipeline.
Jeez. How big that can get?
Well, let's see, all these numbers I've got to relearn because we've gotten bigger as of Friday, but we're 50, we're something like 4,200 hotels in the U.S. The U.S. is obviously a bigger economy than China, but much smaller in terms of population.
Right.
I would think that over time the target in China would be thousands of hotels, though, not hundreds. So far, our growth, and I think the growth in many respects of the global hotel industry, has been in the luxury space.
Right.
Now, as we were talking before, a Marriott in the U.S. looks like or a Marriott in China looks like a Ritz-Carlton here almost, and a Courtyard in China looks like a Marriott here.
Yeah.
So they're really pretty dramatic hotels. The middle of the market in China has been essentially owned thus far by the Chinese hotel companies.
Right.
And so it'll be interesting over time to see, can the global players play in the middle market? And I'm sure they're interested, can the Chinese players play in the luxury tier? And we'll each work on those pieces.
And you also mentioned you think India is the most exciting market outside of China.
I think India is both incredibly exciting as a business proposition, and I think it's an extraordinary destination.
As a country, right.
I don't know, how many of you have been to India? That's pretty good. It's a pretty good group. It's a sign of how, maybe it's a sign of how prominent the Indians are in our business. I was there in January of 15 as part of the President's Export Council with President Obama for the summit with Prime Minister Modi. And I remember telling Prime Minister Modi that he needs more hotel rooms in India. And
his answer was Airbnb.
Well, no. Because it had nothing to do with Airbnb. That must be on your mind. But one of the data points I gave him is I said, you've got 150,000 hotel rooms in India. In the United States, we have 5 million hotel rooms, and 2 million of them are owned by Indians. And they're mostly your countrymen from Gujarati.
Yeah, his state.
His state.
Yeah.
And so you think about 2 million rooms in the U.S. owned by Indians, and 150,000 in the whole country.
So he says, bring some of those back.
He just beamed. He thought, oh my Gujaratis, look at the way they're taking over.
So the big surprise at the announcement, which I think we didn't expect until 2017 or even 2018, was the two programs being interlinked. At what point did you decide this is what we're going to lead with? I think with the Skift interview that you did with us last week, you said that was the #1 priority.
Yeah, we decided in January, basically. So just as a reminder, we announced the deal middle of November, something like that. Obviously, we took everybody by surprise.
Yes.
No, there were lots of rumors about who was buying Starwood. None of them was that Marriott was buying Starwood. So that was a fun thing to launch on the market. We have one of the things that happens when you do a big deal like this, which I didn't really know, is you get consultants everywhere, all of whom want to help you figure out how to integrate these companies. And a number of them are brilliant. They've been through lots and lots of these. But their basic advice is don't do more than you have to do at closing or too quickly afterwards, because there's so much that can go wrong. And notwithstanding that, we started talking in January and saying, you know what, we really ought to deliver something immediately to our customers. We think the transaction should be good.
Because that was the first thing people were talking about on social media.
We got exactly. The SPG members particularly were saying, what's going to happen to our program?
Yeah.
And we actually did one thing before we closed, and that is we rolled out to Marriott Rewards folks things like guaranteed late checkout, which we hadn't done before. Yeah. Because we thought by doing that, we could send a message to SPG members that we actually were aware that there were differences in the program and we could respond. But we decided, let's see if we can't deliver linking of two accounts, status matching, so if you're gold in one and not in the other, you'd be gold in both, and most importantly, the ability to transfer points one program to the other so you could redeem across the whole portfolio, which means practically even if they're two separate programs, you get a lot of the functionality of the entire portfolio. And you can say, well, if I'm an SPG member, it's still in my interest to stay at a Marriott property because I can transfer those points, combine them, and get the benefit at redemption time, and vice versa.
What is so attractive about the SPG member that you like so much? Is it the upscaling of?
Well, I think there's a mix of things, but one of the things that we've watched for years is because the word Starwood is not also a brand on a hotel, they have had some advantages in communicating that we have St. Regis and W and as well as Westin, et cetera, luxury collection. Because Marriott is this exact same word as Marriott Hotels and Marriott Rewards, right? We didn't do as well having Marriott Reward members know that Ritz-Carlton is part of the portfolio. In fact, Ritz-Carlton wasn't part of Marriott Rewards for the longest period of time. And we didn't have the same platform in lifestyle that we do today. And I think what the primary, there are many differences, but the primary thing was in SPG, if you're on the road all the time, maybe staying, one night in the city, and you don't really care where you sleep that much, right? But you've got this notion that I can take my free vacation at W in Puerto Rico, or I can go to, someplace in the South Pacific and to these great luxury resorts, which I think caused a real resonance with those folks, and as a consequence, a real rabid loyalty.
So, 30 brands, which ones are going?
None is going. We're going to keep them all.
On the record, none are going.
We're going to keep them all.
And in terms of management, do you worry about the challenges of 30 different brands and marketing it? You're making Karen Timpone and her boss's life miserable.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective.
I think one of the great things about these miserable lives is we're all so excited about what we can do that while we're working hard, I think people are really turned on. And the challenge around the brands, so the advantage of the brands, why are we keeping 30? Because if we've got a loyalty program that gives that much more choice for redemption and for points earning, we have that much more ability to say, why would you belong to any other program? And therefore get more share of your wallet.
Do you have an eye to sort of the bigger changes that are happening in accommodation and hospitality, which is people want different experiences in every different holiday?
That's right.
Sharing economy certainly speaks to that, which is people want different experiences when they go.
Right.
So is that an eye that you have to that larger picture?
I think it is helpful in that space. I don't. That's not really the full explanation of our transaction, but it does give you this choice. You know, do you want to go to an urban market? Do you want to go to a resort destination? You want to go to some place where you're all by yourself on the beach and you can't see anybody nearby? Do you want to be in the hustle and bustle? Do you want luxury? Do you want extended stay, et cetera? And that gives folks considerable choice. Obviously, some brands are more locally flavored than others, though I think all brands are moving to be more locally flavored. We'd like every brand to communicate when people show up that they're in Cairo if they're in Cairo, or they're in Indianapolis if they're in Indianapolis, or Tokyo if they're in Tokyo. So I think that will continue. That range of choice, though, should be really helpful for the strength of the loyalty program, for all of our desire to craft our own vacations. Let me be actively engaged in figuring out where I want to go and what I want to do.
You were on the trip with President Obama to Cuba, right?
Yes.
You and Brian Chesky. What were the two of you talking about?
Brian and I?
Yeah. Brian is the CEO of Airbnb.
Of Airbnb. We were talking about things that we usually talk about, hotel business. Obviously, we were talking about Cuba significantly.
We just came back from a Cuba trip, the whole Skift team.
Oh, you went to Cuba?
Yeah. So we saw it was the first, is it a start, what's the?
We've got a 4 Points that's open.
We saw it, we drove past it.
And a luxury collection hotel that should open roughly the end of the year. And we've got some conversations about other hotels. How many have been to Cuba? Oh my goodness, that's impressive.
Well, so the travel
This is a travel crowd. Well, that's all the Skift people in the audience.
So earlier a photo was taken of you shaking hands with Dara, the CEO of Expedia. I don't know if you know this. This happened outside.
Yeah, somebody told me that
Scott Marovitz of AP,
Scott was standing nearby and he took a shot.
The biggest conversation, one of the big conversations in the industry is direct booking. Obviously, you're at the forefront of it. Now you have the heft in a lot of ways. Certainly that must have been an impetus for the merger.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the leverage that you have.
Again, the power of the loyalty program, which is the principal tool we use to have a direct relationship with our customers.
Do you think that the customer data that OTAs pass on to you, do you think that's getting better? The types of data that you're getting from them?
I think it's getting better, although historically we really haven't gotten much data from the OTAs,
right.
And so that's one of the issues. And to be fair, I know that there gets a lot of focus on this, particularly in the context of our closing Starwood. People say, okay, now you can finally wage war against the OTAs. In some respects, that overstates it. The OTAs started in a place in which they were delivering truly incremental business to us. The leisure traveler who traveled once a year or less, who maybe didn't know anything about brands, certainly had no loyalty to brands, and we couldn't market to those folks. We couldn't really even know those folks. And so for a platform to be set up to deliver those people to us was really good incremental business. Those customers still exist, and those customers still can get value by going to a site like Expedia's or Pricelines, et cetera. And they exist all around the world. So Rakuten or Ctrip or fill in the blank. So the tension in the relationship is not really there. The tension in the relationship is, as those companies grow, do they grow into trying to get in the middle of our relationship with business travelers? Do they get into the middle of the relationship with more regular leisure travelers?
Right.
And
super travelers.
And do they create an impression in the marketplace that their pricing for Marriott hotels is less than the rates available on our sites? Now, it's been a decade since you could get a lower rate on Expedia than on Marriott.com.
Yeah.
But you survey casual customers and ask them, where do you get the best Marriott rates? And they would say, well, maybe Expedia. And so one of the things we've got to do is use these loyalty programs, use member direct rates,
right.
Use marketing so that people know that they can get a better deal, a more valuable deal. Again, if they care about the brands that they need to have a relationship with. And if I'm traveling once a year, I maybe still don't care.
So from a business travel perspective and the corporate travel perspective, what advantages do the merger give to, let's say, the business travelers beyond the loyalty part?
Well, it's really about loyalty in the first instance. I mean, I think the individual business traveler, it's just that many more choices. I think for a group customer, there'll be that many more choices too. Every one of our hotels is owned by somebody differently. So a group customer can come to us and get bids for 6 or 10 different hotels and have considerable competition. We've been asked in part because I think the brands are well known in the hotel space. People think the hotel business is as oligopolistic as the airline business. And so we got questions from a number of folks Friday when the deal closed. Do you have pricing power? Will this somehow enable you to increase rates and harm the consumer? That's not our world.
Do you see any effect? People, like every day there's a new study on Airbnb's effect on alternative accommodation, home away, vacation rentals, and others. Obviously, you have vacation rentals in your. Didn't you sell?
Our timeshare business we spun off,
Right.
so it's now a separate company. But the relationship we have with them is really like a franchise. So they're still branded, and their customer wouldn't know who owns them.
Do you see any effect anywhere of pricing pressure? Let's say New York City. Very, very, very high density.
Any effect? Yes, probably some. But before talking about any effect, the impact has been much less than I think most people would guess. Okay. We've watched Airbnb grow from nothing to 2 or 3 million listings. I don't know what they have today in the last 5 years. And you would think, well, how can that happen without having a pronounced impact on the hotel space? And I don't know that I know all the answers to that. A piece of it, I think, is they're bringing new customers into the market. I think a piece of it is those room nights are not available every night of the year, so some of them are available only occasionally. But one thing that's reasonably clear is I think at special event times. Think about the Olympics, think about UNGA here in New York last week, think about the Pope's visit to Philadelphia. These kinds of events where in the past, hotels would all be full at almost whatever rate they wanted to charge. I think what happens is hosts in Airbnb or the other platforms are rational economic animals.
Right.
And so when they know that high rates are available, they're going to put their apartment or their home on the market. And as a consequence, the peakish times get a little less peakish.
Right.
That can impact profitability. I'm not really sure that's a bad thing, though.
Do you see
I say to people, imagine charging $1,000 a night when the Pope visits Philly.
You can't
Somehow
do
it just
that.
doesn't seem.
Yeah. As a hotel, you'll get tons more hate than, let's say, an Airbnb host would, because you are a corporate brand.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, people understand it because it's the market at work, but it just doesn't feel as good.
Do you think there's any possibility that you would work with one of these players in terms of distribution? Some part of Marriott, some funky boutique brands are listed on Airbnb, for example.
Well, I think it will influence the industry, right? Some of the trends that this is about is localized experiences, and that's maybe a little bit about a hosted environment, but it's often about getting into a neighborhood. I think another piece of it is sort of small groups. I think of my kids. I've got 2 late 20s daughters. If they get together with 6 women from their college class, they want to have a home to be in, and a hotel doesn't work very well for them.
Yeah.
So how do you, in some brands, maybe have a suite which has a common space in it? Not like a presidential suite, right, which is this massive piece of real estate with 1 bedroom.
Right.
But instead, a place that has a living room and has somebody to stay in that, particularly on weekends when you got leisure business, could be a useful antidote to that. I think working with them or getting into the business, Accor, of course, has gotten in
very interesting
a little
experiments.
bit.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be quite interesting. The first conversation I had with Airbnb folks, and one of the things that was sobering to me is Brian Chesky said, when somebody has a bad experience, they don't blame Airbnb. They blame their host, or the host blames the guest.
Great
And
position.
they each essentially rank each other. We haven't done any study on this, but I'm absolutely certain if Marriott was in the business, The bad experience would be our fault.
Yeah.
Because customers would say, well, wait a second, this is a Marriott branded thing. Don't you do anything to vet the host or vet the guest? And as a consequence, I think it's a tougher platform.
So you've also been very active in a larger sense in the travel industry at the policy level with President Obama, Brand USA, trying to get travel elevated from a policy perspective, been very active at it. Elections are coming up, everybody's talking about all kinds of things. Where do you think travel as an industry is at the policy level today, irrespective of the government, 2016 as we stand? What can we do better?
We are in as good a place for an industry globally and in the US as we've ever been. I think a lot of that is because in the US is about President Obama and his administration, but it is also true now on the Hill that people understand travel. And increasingly, I saw Roger Dow across the room
Roger,
someplace this morning.
was here, I think.
I've made this comment to Roger before, but it used to be that when hotel people or travel people try to get on the Hill, it's like you'd have to beg to get an appointment. And now we can get people to come to our meetings. And we had one of the leaders of the House caucus come in and said, you know, the hotel business is kind of cool. And that's such a great thing to hear.
Yeah.
But I think it's because of what we've been saying as an industry. 10% of all jobs, roughly, in the United States and in the world are dependent on travel. And so we're, if not the biggest, the second biggest.
We just keep saying it's the biggest and it'll happen.
We ought to just keep saying it's the biggest. Yes. And of course, the risk today, more exemplified by Donald Trump than any other American politician, but recurring in other parts of the world, is you get folks, the Brexit vote is a piece of this, you get folks who basically are turning inward, who are saying, you know, in effect, keep the others out, keep the foreigners out, make our borders bigger, maybe metaphysically bigger, make it harder for people to come in, cut yourself off from trade in the rest of the world. And in effect, you're sort of communicating to the rest of the world you're not welcome.
Turns out the guy who owns hotels does not like guests.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So, when big incidents happen, terrorism, Brexit was a planned, actually it was not a planned event. Turns out nobody was planning for it.
Yeah, everybody thought afterwards, what did we do?
Zika and others. When the call comes to you, what can you do? Like do you say, okay, it's going to be temporary hit, we're looking long term, there's nothing we can do? Like Zika, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, in every instance I can think of, when the call has come, the team is already on it. And this stuff, unfortunately, we live in a risky enough world, and you have to respond quickly enough that the people on property have got to be trained, and they are. They've got, you know, hypotheticals they've worked through, they practice, but they've also got to be empowered to make the decisions that have to be made. And so when the calls come in, you know, it's typically a rank order of priorities. How are our people? How are our guests? How's the building? And then you start to say, okay, now what are we going to do going forward?
And hotels are a big marquee things that people want to be seen doing bad things too, like airports are.
Yeah, I mean, they are classic soft targets in the sense that they're open to people. They're intended to be open to people. And, you know, you won't have a successful hotel if you board up the front door.
Yeah. We have 6 minutes, 35 seconds. This is, I want to take questions just because it's such a high interest. Arne is the man of the hour and week and month. There are microphones there. Quick question. Joe, you want to go ahead?
Yes, Joe Leader. I'm the CEO of the Airline Passenger Experience Association. You kind of blew my mind last Friday when you took the step of really rewarding all of the people that came over from Starwood so richly. So thank you for that. What led to that decision, and what was the thought process as you went through this with the integration teams in terms of loyalty?
You're talking about the SPG move.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, the way we think about this is there are three intensely interested communities in looking at this deal: our associates, our customers, and then our hotel owners. And each of them, at least what we heard when the deal was announced and what we predicted, understand why the deal should be good for them. But for us to have momentum out of the gates, it seemed to us we needed to deliver immediate benefits to each one of those three communities. And so we said, all right, well, what are we going to do for the guests? How do we get there? And again, back to this, what the advisors say is don't do more than you have to. We looked at what the airlines had done. None of the airlines had linked accounts the day of their close. Tended to be half a year later or maybe longer than that. But we thought, well, we're not talking about merging the programs. There'll still be two separate programs, two separate technology platforms, two different sets of rules. But why can't you create a quick, bridging site up above it and deliver from the get-go this benefit to the customers? And after people basically said, "Are you mad?" Or "Are we mad?" to try and think about this, we figured out it could be done, and we were pleased that didn't leak too, because I think nobody expected anything when we announced it, and so to be able to come out and say, "There's something here right now," and we're getting 100,000 people a day linking their accounts, and we haven't really pushed the communications out yet because we didn't want 50 million at one time. We didn't want to crash the site, but it's off to a good start. Thank you.
Other questions anybody has? One question as people come up, one question I do have is that in an age where the younger generation wants to shun everything corporate,
Yeah.
how do you tell them size matters? Why should they care? That Marriott is now the world's largest hotel company. By the way, Wyndham guy was up here, says we're still the world's largest company, still the world's largest hotel company by rooms or whatever. But in an age where the younger generation wants everything non-corporate, or at least a big chunk of it,
Yeah.
how do you appeal to them? Like, what is that something you think about?
Well, I mean, we've all got to be cautious about making millennials monolithic. They are as different in their points of view one from another as any generation is. And in many respects, I'm a long way from being a millennial, but what millennials are described as liking, I like a lot of those things too. And I don't think it is anti-corporate. I think it is anti-phony. So I think that what they demand is you've got to be authentic to what you are. And you can still get a big share of a millennial wallet or a new age traveler wallet by delivering great value, by delivering a genuine welcome. We can do even better if we can deliver a localized experience, if we can deliver local food and beverage, if we can deliver design that's interesting. And we're trying to do all those things. Of course, sometimes we do that with new brands. Think about Autograph, which is independent iconic brands, or Edition, which is our partnership with Ian Schrager, or Moxie, which is in the economy space, but is a very new take on that. And sometimes it's what we do with the existing brands we have. How do we make sure the Marriott full-service hotels are delivering up-to-date product, but also product which one hotel differs from every other hotel? We have learned that what used to be wanted was we want a predictable experience.
Consistency
is no longer what people want. Now, don't disappoint me on room size and cleanliness and service.
and Wi-Fi.
But then I want everything else on top of that.
I think we have time for one more question, two more questions, quick.
Hello, this is Adrian from SmartLang. I noticed that your app is currently in 6 languages, including English, but it's not supporting languages like Japanese or Arabic. So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about what you think you can do to appeal to the global traveler.
Yeah, we're going to have to roll out more languages. We've got some white label sites, including in Arabic and in Japanese. But we need to bring those in-house and make them our sites. Starwood had more languages than Marriott had, and it won't surprise you to know that we're already saying, how can you take a language away? So we're going to have to make sure that we move more aggressively. And it's been a matter of priorities and costs, and we'll turn that dial up.
Nancy, go ahead.
Nancy
What she said is 30 brands can't possibly be enough, can it? No, there aren't. I mean, I think we have a pretty complete lineup. And there's nothing that we're working on that's imminent. I think the likelihood of additional brands would be something sort of Protea-like. We acquired Protea in sub-Saharan Africa, where we had nothing. In the abstract, we would have just as soon taken one of our existing brands and put those on hotels in sub-Saharan Africa. But because the brand was already on all those hotels, we ended up adding a brand to our portfolio. It is still conceivable we could find a market outside the United States where we're too thinly distributed, and we might find a brand that would be added to it. But I wouldn't see us adding another distinct brand just for the reason of adding another brand.
He has to go. Make it very interesting.
All right. A little while ago, you guys announced Local Perks, a program to do local targeted recommendations to guests. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about customized recommendations and tailoring the experience to the guests and where you're going to go with that?
Yeah, we've got 3 or 4 experiments going on in that space. The Local Perks is one of them. We've also got 4 or 5 markets. I see some of our team here that could make sure I'm accurate. But 4 or 5 markets where we've got a online concierge, local planner, idea site, if you will. And that's another experience we got going on. We got some geolocator stuff going on so that we can identify customers as they're getting nearby and do some individual marketing. And we've got some mobile services which are pretty interesting. They're a little bit different place, but it allow folks to have room service waiting for them in their room when they get in, or communicate with the hotel when they're near the hotel, and allow us to communicate to them so we can say we're having a single malt tasting in the bar in 45 minutes or whatever. And I think there will be a lot of this going on, sometimes with partners, sometimes we'll do on our own. I don't know whether it will ever independently be significant money making, but hopefully it will add again a flavor of local and new, exciting, fun aspect to this day.
All right. Thank you very much, Arne.
You bet. Thank you all.
This way.